Hey everybody, my name's Chance and welcome to the channel. On this channel we'll be testing out different recipes head to head, looking at the science of food and trying to really dive in deep and try to make your home cooking a little bit better. So today we're actually going to be making a pizza dough and then eventually be cooking that pizza dough, but we're going to go through what's called cold fermentation. And cold fermentation is when you make the dough and you let it ferment in the fridge. And so you're inactivating the yeast, essentially. You're slowing it down, really. So you're slowing the yeast down, and what that does is it allows the natural enzymes that are in the flour, like protease and amylase, to act on the proteins. And in terms of the protease, it starts to cleave some of the protein, and that actually helps form more gluten. And then the amylase starts to break down the carbohydrate structures within the flour, producing a bit more sugars, and that as you leave it in there longer, there's more sugars that's produced from that amylase. And when you bring the dough back out and then you let it warm up for its final proofing before you make the actual pizza, all those extra sugars, that yeast just eats it right up, and then there's some left over, and that gives you a little bit of browning on your crust as you're making your pizza. So supposedly cold fermentation is supposed to be the best way to make pizza dough. What we're going to do is test out how the different lengths of fermentation time in the fridge affect the pizza dough. And we'll be making all 3 different pizza doughs. One that we're making today will be the 24-hour, and we've already made 2 others that are already in the fridge. So one will be doing cold fermentation for 72 hours, one for 48 hours, and one for 24 hours. So a 3-day, 2-day, and 1-day cold fermentation. And then we'll be comparing the results that we see when we cook them. Or what we're going to do now, I'll show you how to make the pizza dough. And this is a pizza dough recipe I got from Kenji Lopez. It's his New York style basic pizza dough recipe. It's my personal favorite one that I've tried. I've tried quite a few, and I've really liked this one. I love New York style pizza. So let's go ahead and go over what ingredients we got. So Kenji's original recipe that's linked in the description of this video makes 3 pizza doughs. So it'll make 3 different pizzas. I actually cut this down to make 2 pizzas. So what I'm adding first is the flour, 420 grams of flour, and then 10 grams of sugar, 6.5 grams of salt, and 6.5 grams of instant yeast. Once all the dry ingredients are added to the food processor, it's a simple matter of just pulsing it a couple times to incorporate all those ingredients together. Kenji really suggests using a food processor to make this dough. It's a unique method, but it works really well. Dry ingredients in here, and now we just need to add our oil and water. So add the oil. Just let it try to get out every bit we can to keep all of our tests as similar as possible. Again, if you have to measure out all the ingredients when you're doing baking. Really makes it easier. And now the water. Again, 90 to 100 degrees, ideally. Even though we're going to cold ferment it, it gives it a little boost right at the start. Okay, put the lid on. Now we just let it go for 30 seconds. All right, so we got our dough out of the food processor, and it's going to be sticky. That is completely normal. And what we're going to do is just knead it for a little bit until it gets a little bit more structure to it, a little bit less stickiness. Only for about a minute here we'll knead. And for this dough recipe, I will link it in the description for you guys if you're interested in trying it out. It is, like I said, my favorite, and it's easy. It just takes a little bit of forethought to make the dough ahead of time if you're going to do this cold fermentation method, which we will see what kind of impacts that has to the flavor and what kind of impact it has to the airiness of the crust. I have read other articles. Kenji has an article about this too. He came to the conclusion of, you should cold ferment for 3 to 5 days. And I kind of want to test that out and see how much of a difference there is between 1 day, 2 day, and 3 day. And really just see if we can tell, doing a blind test, what the difference is. That's really it. Now I'm just going to try forming a little ball here. If you kind of drag it over and then peel it back with your fingers and kind of let it pull itself on the countertop, it kind of sticks and it pulls, and it starts to pull this top a little bit tighter. When you make the actual dough balls, this is the technique you'll do too. But I'll just do that for now. Now we're just going to put this in a bag and in the fridge. So I have a Ziploc bag labeled with today's date. Like I said, I've got 2 other dough balls in the fridge already. This is the 3rd one. This will be the 24-hour cold ferment. So before we put it in there, we're going to oil the bag so it comes out easier when we're ready to actually make the pizza. What I'm using is a misto here. It's a $10 kitchen gadget that I highly recommend. You simply fill it halfway with oil, screw the lid on, pump air in there to create pressure, and then spray it, and it comes out like a mist. I believe I have avocado oil in here right now. So just put some oil in the bag. Take your dough ball. Place it in the bag. You don't have to get all the air out or anything like that. Just keep a little bit of air in there, Ziploc it, and put it in the fridge. It's Saturday, and what that means, it's time to make some pizza. 3 hours before you're ready to make the pizza, take the dough out of the fridge. Here you'll see me splitting each batch of dough into 2 and then making them into dough balls. I then take those dough balls and throw them in their respective greased bags and allow them to come up to room temperature over the course of the next 3 hours. With 1 hour left to prove your dough, place a cast iron skillet inside your oven and preheat it as high as it'll go. My oven gets to 550 degrees, which resulted in the surface temperature of the pan getting to 600 degrees. Now it's time to make the pizza. A light dusting of flour on the countertop works well. This is some high hydration dough, so don't be too afraid of a little flour there. You're going to want to put some on top as well, but all you really need to do is use your fingers and your knuckles in order to spread this dough out into a somewhat of a circle, best you can. And as you're working that dough out, just make sure to leave a little bit on the ends there to form the crust. You don't want to deflate the crust out. We're just going to stretch it just a little bit on our hands like this. Let's see how that looks. Needs a little bit more. Just let it kind of naturally stretch over your and hang and let the gravity do the work. Just rest it on your knuckles. We're actually going to take the pan out, place it on the oven, and then we're going to put our dough right in the pan. Ooh, and it kind of stuck on there. Whoops. Well, that's what we're going to get. The benefit of using a cast iron pan is you can put the dough right in the hot pan and it starts cooking the bottom of the pizza. This starts to formulate a nice even brown crust, And during this time, you can dress the pizza and put the cheese and pepperonis, whatever you want to put on top, and then throw it back in the broiler and just leave it in there for 3 to 5 minutes and it'll be done. And right when we put it in, we're going to switch it to broil. It's been about 3 minutes. We're going to check it. Oh yeah. That looks pretty much done. Look at that beautiful crust. And listen. Oh. The underbelly looks phenomenal. So now what you actually been waiting for, the test results. From what I discerned from the flavor, the texture, the 72-hour and the 48-hour cold fermented crust were pretty similar. The 24-hour definitely lagged behind. As far as flavor, 24 hours had a bit of a doughy flavor to it. I think that probably comes from that less time for the amylase to break down those starches in the dough. That's my hypothesis anyway. As far as texture, 72 hours was definitely superior. It had better leopard spotting. It was airier. You know, it rose more. Overall, the crust was a lot bigger. And it was definitely my favorite. But really, the difference between a 72-hour and a 48-hour cold fermentation? Not a lot. But the 24 hours to the 48 hours, there's definitely a difference there. So if you have the opportunity to do so, I'd say cold ferment for the 72 hours. 3 days in advance. But if you only have a day, well, the 24 hours is still good. Don't get me wrong. But I prefer the 72 hours. That's all we got for today. Thanks for tuning in.